many, many, many LGBTQIA characters in our stories, and yet we don't have enough leads.
Keep out of trouble and double your choices. I'm with you, but the situation is fraught. You've got to be carefully taught. Talk, you
Why don't the boys have to take a Don't Murder Girls class?
You're Ken.
But it's Barbie and Ken. There is no just Ken.
So the title of this session we're calling Hollywood a Woketopia, which I thought was pretty funny. They call Christian Toto the woke whisperer. Award-winning journalist, movie critic, Hollywood veteran. He served as a film critic and founder of Hollywood in Toto. That's TOTO.com. Comprehensive website that covers pop culture from a conservative perspective. Christian witnessed the intentional cultural manipulation occurring in movies and TV shows. I don't think you guys are seeing it, so luckily we brought Christian here. The thing that drove his revolt against Hollywood was the industry was bathed in woke. So I want to welcome award-winning journalist and author of Virtue Bombs, How Hollywood Got Woke and Lost Its Soul, Christian Toto. And what I like most about Billy Harfosh is we have the same hairstyle. Anyway, I met Billy a while back through a lady named Paula Tuliani, and he did an interview with her, and I said, this guy's a real talent. His interview with her on radio was second to none, and I said he should be somebody that should be featured. He interviews a lot of influential celebrities on his radio show, as well as politicians in Arizona, and his program is called Show Up America with Billy Harfosh, and has been aired all across America on iHeartRadio. And in the celebrity world, he's welcomed hundreds of musicians, comedians, TV celebrities, etc., which is why he has a pretty good idea of what they're thinking. And he also had the #1 English-speaking program in Spain. So welcome, Billy Harfosh. And I'm going to sneak around here and talk to these gents.
All right.
So let me begin by saying I made a movie back in 2018 called Bleeding Blue. And it was meant to tell the truth about policing in America. And because there was so much going on with the Michael Brown situation, and there were so many lies being told about the police. And my thing is, look, there are bad cops. Excuse me. In this particular case, as we've learned, Darren Wilson did nothing wrong. So when I went to tell the truth about this movie, and I made it, the truth about policing, two things happened. Hollywood said, we're not going to distribute it. Theaters said, we're not going to show it. And I revolted because I didn't whine about it. I decided I would start my own site, post my own movie, promote my own movie, etc., because there's no sense whining about it. I wasn't going to change Hollywood. What I've noticed is that we have this tendency to want to change Hollywood. We want to change the culture by attacking the beast that is not willing to change. And I want to begin there. And Christian, let's start with you. You've had a lot of experience in Hollywood, and you became the woke whisperer, as they call you, so woke Hollywood whisperer. So give us your perceptions. I think we probably agree that Hollywood has certainly changed over the few decades. But what, from your perspective, do you believe it's changed?
Well, your story is not unfamiliar to me. I hear it again and again and again. And Hollywood tells stories, but Hollywood tells very specific stories. And if there's a story that doesn't fit that narrative, then there are consequences. It could be banned, it could be punished, it could lack distribution. So that's part of what I cover, is that, you know, Hollywood should be about getting more voices out there, not less. And that's just a tiny bit of the work I do. And part of this woke situation where, you know, on paper, a black filmmaker should be risen up, should be celebrated.
You would think.
You would think. I just did an interview with Eric July. He's a a black entrepreneur. He created this comic book series called Isom on his own. I think there was millions in sales within maybe like a month or so. He is this incredible success story. He's building out his team, but he's probably right of center, maybe a little bit hard to define. So no one wants to celebrate him. There's no feature stories about his success. And so, well, you know, it's a great story. It's inspiring. Why don't we tell that feature? So we don't. And this is just part of it. And, you know, I think one of the main things I often say about woke is that it's a joke, and it's not just a quip, because I see again and again and again where it's full of hypocrisy. And just a quick example, you know, Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian on Late Night, you know, he's done a lot of blackface in his past.
Who is he?
Jimmy Kimmel Live. And, you know, that was 20, 25 years ago. And he's never been held accountable for it. He's never had to publicly apologize for it, because he is a very left of center voice, and they want to support a left of center voice. So even though blackface is verboten now, we don't do that, we don't go near that, he won't be punished. Jimmy Fallon did one incident of blackface 20 years ago, and he had to go on his Tonight Show and apologize for it and do sort of a mea culpa. And, you know, but he is not as aggressively left of center. So he didn't have the woke protection that Jimmy Kimmel has. Just tiny, tiny examples of what's going on.
So,
Well, what I would say, Kevin, is mic working?
yeah, can we get it up a little higher?
So what I would say is, I think that you really touched on something, meaning we can't necessarily change Hollywood, but what we can do is change the platform. You mentioned a website. And why isn't there a conservative-leaning streaming site? You know, you look at what Joe Rogan has done in moving from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, in comedy and podcasting, and now he's kind of creating his own narrative. He's doing his own thing. The establishment of Hollywood, and we've seen this through music as well, are no longer the gatekeepers. I think that's one of there's a lot of drawbacks and problems with technology and what we're about to go through in the next 50 years as a culture. But one of the positives is the big boys aren't the gatekeepers anymore.
Right.
There's potential all over the place. So instead of going through the normal channels of getting funding and producing a film or whatever you're trying to do, how can we get creative and do it in our own way?
Well, let's touch on that a bit, because we had a religious panel, and it was funny because we talked afterwards, and one of the pastors said to me, Kevin, I don't feel like we answered the question about what we can do, because my point was religion is going down in terms of acceptability. Wokeism in religion is going up. That's not a good trend line. I'm a management consultant. I know how to read the trend lines. That's not a good trend line. And he made the comment, it's about family. And I said, yeah, you can have a great family, but your kids are on their TikTok. Their life is outside of you in many, many cases. My 16-year-old's here, and I've seen about as much of him as I see when he's at home, right? So that's not where you're going to win. And so, but what I did say is this. We have Christian music now. When it first came out, it was kind of hokey. And then suddenly, it's actually pretty good. If you're flipping a station and you hear some rock, you might not know that it's actually Christian rock. Or if you hear some R&B or some hip hop, it might be Christian hip hop or whatever. And occasionally we found ourselves with one of those or two of those songs actually going over into pop culture. Same with movies and film. When we first started making the films, they were rather hokey. And now suddenly there are some very good films that have come out, and every now and then one of them gets over. So the way I measure is how much of that, if 1% of the music is coming over the other direction, 1% of the films, can we start keeping metrics around it to see how the wins occur? So I agree with you.
Yeah. Right, but I think also on the left, at the beginning in Hollywood, that's what they've done, on the left side. Mm-hmm. So slowly, I often talk about like comedies. I asked the audience here, what's the last great comedy you've seen? I have on a lot of comedians on my show and actors on my show, and I said, some movie you did in '95. Take Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. If you rewatch that movie, there's themes and things in that movie Hollywood would never produce that nowadays because it's too risque.
By the way,
Blazing Saddles, that's a great. But seriously,
example.
so I think that slowly Hollywood and the culture has put these little things into our culture, into the movies, into the music.
Bombs.
Just little drips of wokeness. I flip through the TV and watch commercials. I'm all through for diversity, but every commercial has to have a wheelchair and an Asian and a Middle Eastern and
Oh, and now the new one is
every commercial.
a white woman married to a black woman married to a white guy. I've seen a lot of that these days.
So
Christian, let me ask you this: you spent a lot of time in Hollywood. Did you go there sort of with the woke mentality and evolve, or did you just go there as you were and you just notice the changes?
I mean, I've been covering Hollywood for the last 20, 25 years. And I got into it because I just wanted to review movies, nothing political, nothing cultural. I like movies. I want to review movies. I just figured out a way to do that for my career. And that was fine. But then I just realized that, oh my gosh, the vast majority of critics lean to the left and I don't. That's kind of weird. And then I just noticed more and more messaging was coming into the films. And that was like maybe during the Bush years of the presidency. And then the last maybe 8 to 10, then the wokeness came in. And that's where it really does restrict what you can do. It stops you from telling funny stories. It makes it more predictable. If you watch a movie, you can see certain characters on the screen and go, okay, that person's from that background. They may be the good guy or they may be the bad guy. And you mentioned comedies. It is the best question. When was the last big screen comedy that you went to see 3 times and you told all your friends about? We can't make them anymore because what we've done with this woke culture is to say, okay, Bluto from Animal House, the classic movie. There's a scene where he peeps into a sorority house as the girls are changing. He gets a ladder, he does this, and he gets up there and he's looking at them. And it's funny because it's wrong. We all know it's wrong. No one wants our teenage boys to do that. But it's still funny. And at the end, I think he even falls off his ladder or something. He gets his comeuppance. But those moments are now singled out as, well, I don't know if you can do that anymore. That's offensive. Well, he's not a role model. He's being bad on screen, and that's funny. Sometimes things like that are funny. Slipping on a banana peel can be funny. Getting a pie in the face can be funny. We're not throwing banana peels on the street or hitting our friends with pies. It's really weird cultural movement says you can't be bad. You can't be wrong. You can't be offensive. I've been rewatching The Office, which is an unbelievably great show, and I could talk about it for hours. But the Michael Scott character, the main character, the boss played by Steve Carell, is ignorant, kind of racist in a way that he doesn't mean it, but it comes off as racist because he's so dumb and immature and selfish, and yet you can't help loving him. It's the most complicated character. It's fascinating, and yet Steve Carell has said, I don't know if I can make that character today. So you have one of the greatest characters in sitcom history, a la Archie Bunker in a way.
Yeah.
And you can't make him. That's what woke does. That's what woke takes away from us. It's terrible. Really
I love Hannibal Lecter. I watch that shit.
One quick irony is that you can't do this, you can't do that. We have about 18,000 movies about hitmen with hearts of gold. And that's okay. So you have serial killers like John Wick, who just kill everyone. Well, they did kill his dog, so I get it. But, but that's okay. That's why the woke is just nonsense, because the sands are always shifting. None of it makes sense. But they have a cultural power that makes you fear the stories you want to tell.
Yeah. So before I pivot back to you, Billy, so one of my friends is a Hollywood producer, made lots of movies. He was a stand-up comedian. And he was telling me, we were talking, and he was in Minority Report. He's been in dozens of movies, and he's a director now because he says he's sick of trying to get in front of the screen. So he says, we were talking about films and stuff, and he says, Kevin, he says, I'm going to make you a star. He says, I'm going to make you handicapped. You're going to be of Muslim faith. You're gay. And your boyfriend doesn't want to marry you. But at this point, I'm starting to just laugh. And he's like, no, I'm serious. He goes, I'm going to write this movie for you. And he goes, you're going to win Academy Awards. And then he goes, and I'm dead serious. Same guy made the movie with Kevin Costner, where Kevin Costner is the protagonist. He goes to get his granddaughter, who's half black. Kevin's son, I think, died or something. The mother's, the mother died and his son was in prison or whatever. So he ends up raising the granddaughter. And he said, I spent $20 million on this film. It had Costner in it, critically acclaimed. I hadn't seen it, but he goes, Kevin, I'm telling you, it's a great film. And he says, had I made Costner black, the film blows up, it wins Academy Awards, etc. It's that simple. So, Billy, I don't know if you want to comment on any of that, but.
Well, my whole thing goes back to, I mean, we're talking about woke in Hollywood here, but a lot of it does go back into politics. And by the way, if Trump is our next president, I think Hollywood is going to just, I don't know what's going to happen in Hollywood. But it goes back, it all kind of, culture drives politics, and politics at times drives culture. And the one thing that gives me hope is a lot of the, I don't know about, in your career, but a lot of these celebrities, when you're on the air with them, they remind me of the politicians that I interview. So in other words, they're one way when the red light's on. The moment we get off the air and we're sitting in the studio and we're maybe having a coffee or something, I'm like, wait, you're not the same guy that I just had on the air for the last 30 minutes. So that gives me a little bit of hope, because a lot of these people don't necessarily prescribe to the ideals that we think they do in their private life. And we talk about Rob Schneider a lot. And Rob Schneider is a guy that I've had on my show multiple times. He's a great guy, but he's sort of gotten blackballed in a sense by Hollywood because he can't make the movies he wants to make anymore because he's gotten political, right? He endorsed Carrie Lake. He speaks out. And
which, by the way,
we need more Rob Schneiders.
Right, but the other side speaks out all the time. They're very vocal about their politics. I was talking to one of the ladies in the lobby earlier, and she said to me, I try to stay very neutral on social media. And I go, why? I go, is the other side of whatever your ideology, are they neutral? Mm-hmm. If somebody goes on my page and says, Kevin, I don't like your movie, and I don't have the right to fire back, well, I do like my movie, right? That's insane. And I think that to your point, Billy, we built this culture that we get one side of the argument and we're not allowed to see the other. So my question to you, Christian, is it a money-driven thing? I mean, I think the short answer is, of course it is, with respect to the actors. And Billy, you're saying, I'll say this publicly, but I won't let you know my real ideology privately. But what are your thoughts?
It is and it isn't. It's money in that they may lose work and money if they don't toe the line. It's not about money, because I don't think, generally speaking, woke sells. I would say Barbie is a huge exception to the rule. I thought it was very woke, and it was a huge hit. But generally speaking, there have been a lot of product that have just failed by being woke. But I think that the actors do everyone a disservice by not speaking up, by not defending their art, by not defending free speech. And the examples that I give are to me, nauseating. Scarlett Johansson and Halle Berry, two of our best actors. Beautiful, talented, you name it. Well, they both took on projects where they were going to play a trans character. And there was an uproar immediately on social media. And both those actresses backpedaled immediately, quit the jobs, and did that hostage apology. I'm so sorry. I will be an ally. I made this mistake. Now, again, these are people, they couldn't have more clout in Hollywood. They couldn't have more power. And they buckled instantly. And also Stephen King. Stephen King put out a comment saying, when it comes to art and movies, it should be about quality. And that caused a kerfuffle. And not only did he apologize for saying that art should be about quality, he wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post about that. Now, the last time I checked, I actually went to his house once. Guy's got a lot of money. His legacy is secure. He writes a book and everyone buys it. But he buckled too. He couldn't even stand up for his right to have an opinion, and he couldn't stand up for his right to say art should be about quality, not about checking a certain box. Now, if those people at the height of their powers, with all the money in the world, if they couldn't stand up, what chance do I have, or you, anyone? We will be canceled. But the more people stand up, take a stand, the better chance we have of breaking through this. But we're not there yet.
That's very. I just want to add one thing, and I would like to get both your opinions. I look at this whole thing, this wokeness thing, kind of like the Miley Cyrus song, like a wrecking ball. So it's swung way left, and a lot of times in society and culture, we know what happens. Inevitably, it sometimes comes right back and goes even further to the other side. So I mean, in your experiences, have you guys seen any sort of nuggets or hints that we could be in a different place 5 years down the road? And actually, I see it a lot. I see it now since Elon Musk has X. I see people that are speaking out, and the woke stuff isn't as cool. It isn't as in as it was maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think it's coming back hard right.
Yeah, I love Billy because Billy becomes the host. That's what I love about radio. It's my show now. Good job. I'll answer first if you're okay with that. The short answer is Hollywood is dead man walking. It's been happening for a while. It started years ago, decades ago, when Mark Cuban bought a little company called Broadcast.com, and Ustream came on board, and we started getting things on our computer, these little video vignettes and things that started happening. I told my buddies, get out of Blockbuster. A friend of mine sold all his Blockbuster stores because I said it's not going to happen. Redbox is probably, does anybody, I don't know the last time I've been to a Redbox, right? So now we've got things streaming right into our house, and it was controlled. It was controlled by the cable companies who wrap all their other crazy crap into the cable packages that you have. I just canceled cable. I know many other people. Anybody else canceled cable? Or yeah, so there's a few hands that go up. So you can get it by the drink, and you've got real competition from Netflix to Hollywood, which is a version of Hollywood that coexisted for a while, but really in fact took over Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't know it yet, but they're sleeping with the enemy there because Netflix is going to take over. And then we get to what can conservative people do, like myself. I started my own streaming site, and there were companies like PureFlix, who didn't do so well on their own and got bought by Sony, I believe. But it was catering to a culture for the religious sect. There are other genres. There are people that just do horror films that you can go stream. We stream shorts and award-winning films through another service that we call the Flick Fest. So I think that evolution is just Hollywood getting the death toll. And the other thing that's happening, and the writer's strike had to do with it, and we'll cover the last piece of this with me and Michael Bowen. But with you, AI, artificial intelligence, chat GPT, deep fakes, all the things now you can do electronically, and the revolution that occurred in technology. I mean, the cameras that are filming us now, those cameras probably, number one, look at the size of them. They're little, and there's some even smaller than that, and those things cost $4,000 or $5,000. Those used to be $100,000 cameras. To make a film in Hollywood for $20 million, you could easily make for under $1 million today. And now when you add that other layer of technology, I think they're dead man walking. And I think that what the conservative movement has to do is embrace that and create, or I don't want to say conservative because I don't think of it that way. If you want to create something different in Hollywood, there's no better opportunity than right now. And they're running scared for a reason.
It's a great point, and it is a great time right now for the technological reasons. And I'm seeing this most profoundly in comedy, because when I watch late night TV, it's the same joke every night. When I watch Saturday Night Live, again, the same joke, the same targets, the same principles. There's nothing surprising about it. Comedy really is all about surprise. But what I see now is all these different YouTube creators and these podcasters and these video folks who are making these amazing videos that are funny and edgy and different. And they truly speak truths to power. There's a comedian, Tyler Fisher, who has a wonderful Dr. Fauci impression. And, he's not being vicious to Fauci. Maybe he should, but he's not. But it's funny and it's irreverent, and he's poking fun at him in ways. Now, you would never see Stephen Colbert do that. In fact, he has Fauci on. They're buddies. They're getting shots together. Why do we need a comedian who works on YouTube to do the job of a professional stand-up comedian like a Stephen Colbert or a Jimmy Kimmel? But that's where we are now. But the beauty of it is that the technology is so powerful, you can make it look like a Saturday Night Live sketch. The performances are excellent, and you could share it like that. It could have hundreds and thousands of views. And another point to what you're saying is that I listened to Tim Dillon. He's another comedian. He's maybe right of center, but just he's counterculture. He just doesn't, when everyone zigs, he zags. And he said, you know what? I make my show on a shoestring budget, but it gets more views than CNN sometimes. And that should scare him to death, the whole industry. When I go to bed, I watch my podcasts and I watch my cooking videos. Sam, the cooking guy, is great. And I'm thinking, it costs a fraction of what's on the Food Network. It's great. It's easily accessible. I enjoy it. There's no reason for me to go elsewhere. That's the future. And that really should scare him.
Let me make one other point that sort of reemphasizes. So you look at the Fallons and the Kimmels and those guys, and what people don't understand about that industry is there's a room full of writers that write their material, and their numbers are going. I think when Trevor Noah left, he'd lost 3/4 of his audience from when he got it from Jon Stewart. So you're not talking about popular guys. And this is with writers writing in a room and people scripting and runners and everybody putting it together, people cutting videos and trying to build these segments. And still, he's losing audience like crazy. So I don't know what the cost was. We were trying to figure it out one time, but the cost of these of producing a show like that is astronomical. And to your point, Christian, you do a YouTube something that's funny and it costs you practically nothing. And the other side of it is this: it's comedy by the drink. These writers are crafting a message, a narrative of this is what I think is my version of funny. And then somebody comes along and says, I think this is funny. And then another person comes along, and when you find out, to use a TikTok analogy, these kids are just like, oh, you know, my son looks at TikTok videos practically all day long, just laughing at him, Dad, look at this, look at this, look at this. And some of them are goofy to me, but some of them are pretty doggone clever, and it costs nothing to make.
That's right. You know, one thing I don't understand is we know at the end of the day that these networks, what do they love most? They love money. So you talk about those guys, Kimmel, Colbert, Fallon, even my beloved, I hate to say this publicly, but my beloved Howard Stern. He's
You should hate to say that.
He's the reason that I do what that I got into radio. And even Howard Stern has gone woke.
Completely.
You've seen the recent comments, and that hurts me to say that. But if they love money, and we know that half the country, let's call it half the country, maybe over half, is done with this wokeness, and they're actually conservative, right? Why don't we have a mainstream voice out there that leans conservative?
Should be you, Billy Harper.
I'm just saying, like, look at all of the mainstream media, look at all of the comedy shows, Saturday Night Live. There's nothing, we have nothing. Even Howard Stern.
Well, so some would argue Greg Gutfeld and
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and I'll be I've been on Greg's show. I've watched his show. Maybe the times I've watched him, it wasn't my cup of tea, because there are times where he's very clever and very funny. But to your point, yes, there should be, okay, we just named 3 or 4 that were theoretically on the other side of the issue, or certainly doing woke comedy. So why aren't there 3 or 4 on the other side doing the opposite comedy, right? Or something that resembles what we consider to be comedy.
Well, I've been saying for a while that it's show business, but there's an asterisk next to the business part, because they're leaving money on the table when you have 5 to 7, maybe 8 aggressively left shows on late night TV, and there's none on the right. Now, obviously, Gutfeld is a newer competitor, and he immediately jumped to near the top of the list. So you don't need to be a genius or a marketing guru to say, oh my gosh, all these shows on late night are left of center that are all cannibalizing the same audience. What if we put a right of center guy or gal in there?
Right.
That's going to kill. They don't want to do it. And I spoke to comedian Michael Loftus, and he said this before. He said he went to Hollywood with an idea for a show like that, but actually it was pretty balanced. It was a little bit left, a little bit right. It was more neutral. And he said the people he spoke to said, we love your idea, but we can't do this. We can't be seen coordinating with this audience.
Well, let's harken back before that, though, Christian. Some of the people in this audience will remember the name Johnny Carson, right? Who dominated, right? Who dominated late night. Now it was a different day, a lot less competition, etc. But I think that show today would still be madly successful because Johnny was irreverent. He didn't care who was on. It wasn't a political statement. It was just have fun with whoever was on for whatever reason. These guys, it is intentionally, we're not having these people on. We're going to have these people on. This is the narrative. This is the ideology that gets sold. And I think they're suffering. But let's go back to that money issue for a second, then got a lot of questions. Howard Stern, your idol. I can't stand Howard. I was on his show about the whole Blasey Ford thing. But with Howard, he's made more money than God, and he won't speak out. And my personal belief is it's because he wants to be liked by the popular kids.
Yep. Absolutely.
I would agree with that.
He fought the system forever. Now the system likes him, and he doesn't want to let it go. And it breaks my heart. I grew up in New York.
Yeah.
I listened to him religiously. He was crass. He was rude. At the end of the day, he was a very fresh voice. He was different. He said things we weren't allowed to say. And all of that is gone now.
He was he was the man that fought the U.S. government. He fought the FCC. I mean, he was such a rebel. And now it's, I don't know. I don't know what's happened. I mean, it could be outside influences, or it could just be an older man changing his views.
But we're picking on him, but I'm saying I think he's only emblematic of all of them. All these guys have the money.
Right.
Stephen King has the money. Stephen King could give a big, middle finger to Hollywood and say, I don't care what you think about me, and be fine with it. They're still going to play his movies. His books are going to get sold, et cetera, but he won't do it. And I think it's because this cult of wokeism that says, I want to be liked. I want you to always like me. All right, let's get to a couple of these questions.
Let's do it.
How do you feel about audiences boycotting movies with actors or producers with no spine, like Johansson and Barry, and King with books?
Boycotting?
Boycotting movies with actors and like, in other words, there's an actor or producer that's in a film that you don't like, and you say, I'm not going. Which, by the way, I do that.
That's their prerogative. You vote with your feet or you vote with your money. You don't want to go see it. You don't want to support it. I got no problem.
I understand it. It's tricky because for every actor who is like that, you've got dozens and dozens of other actors in the movie. You've got cast members who maybe feel differently or don't deserve that. I actually prefer boycotts more. If there's a product out there that is different and unique and counterculture and expresses a value that you care about, that's where you should sink your money in, because that sends a message more than anything. Look at Sound of Freedom. It's the biggest movie of the summer. It was an indie film that sat in the shelf for 5 years. It made $180 million. That is stunning. Absolutely stunning. So I think we're more effective in doing the boycott. So if there's a crowdfunding campaign for something you think is new and fresh and exciting and different, and maybe the creator has been canceled for some ridiculous reason, throw money their way. Yeah. They need it. They're putting their necks out there. Stephen King doesn't need our support, but they do.
That's why I drink Coors Light now. It's a boycott.
You switch?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, good for you. All right, so Christian, his questions to you. Talk about the conversation you had with Charles about the trans character in A Man Called Otto.
Yeah, that was the Tom Hanks movie that came out, I think, last year, and it did moderately well. I believe it might be on Netflix right now. And it's about this older gentleman played by Tom Hanks who is a curmudgeon. He's cranky, he's old school, he's irritable, and the movie is about him learning to accept his neighbors, learning to be a better human being. But mid-movie, he runs into this person who is a trans character. Now, just given everything you know about Otto, the main character, you think, okay, he might be dismissive of the trans character. He might be cruel to the trans character. We don't want people to be cruel to anyone. But just based on his character, that's how he'd act, because that's who he is. But no, he befriends the trans character, they become buddies. And I'm thinking, A, why did you even need to put that in the story? It seems incongruous. But B, it's not even true to the character. So that's what woke is. It just jams in things that don't make sense to send a message about acceptance. Again, I don't want anyone to be cruel, but his character is cruel. In the first half of the movie, he's cruel to everybody. That's all he does is bark at people. That's who Otto is. So why would he make an exception for this person? It just doesn't make sense. And it's a great example. I'll give you one more. There was a movie a couple of years ago, Jungle Cruise with Dwayne Johnson.
What was it called?
Jungle Cruise. And it's an action adventure comedy. It's fine. It's okay. And it's set maybe in the early 1900s. And one of the supporting characters, it turns out, is gay. And he reveals that he's gay to Dwayne Johnson's character, who's this sea captain, kind of crusty, again, old school. And he basically says, I'm okay with that. Now, we're not, back then we weren't as evolved as we are now, where if that were to happen today, of course, who cares, right? It's gay, no big deal. Back then, in the early 1900s, when someone comes out as gay, it wouldn't have gone well. So it doesn't make sense. It takes you out of the movie, and it just is anathema to the whole story. So my point is, why would you even mention it? What's the point? The character's the character. He's enjoyable. He's engaging. Let the story play out. But they have to shove that in because diversity matters more than anything. Even though it doesn't make sense, even though it stops the movie cold, even though it's just wrong for the movie. Again, we don't want anyone to be mean to other people, but you're telling a story. Be honest and authentic to the story.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people want is honest, authentic messages and messages that matter. I don't know if you were going to follow up on that. I was going to ask you both a quick question. So the whale, everybody wanted to see the whale. And we finally rented it because I wanted to see what was this big Brendan Fraser transformation thing. And I said to myself after watching that movie, if Brendan Fraser is not gay, he doesn't win an Oscar. What do you think?
Oh, I don't think he is though, right?
What?
Gay.
In the movie?
No, in the movie.
The character.
In the movie, the character.
The character.
Honestly, I don't know. It's a great performance. I don't want to take that away from him. But also, any movie where you transform yourself physically in any capacity, the Oscar voters love that. So I don't know if I agree with that one completely, honestly.
I don't know. I think if he's a straight guy that helps a boyfriend, I think that's one of those that they go, well, you didn't check that box.
I don't disagree. But I think there were other factors there as well. But I don't disagree with that.
I don't know if we played the clip, but we had a clip with Mads, the guy that was the bleeding eye and the Bond villain.
Mads Mikkelsen?
Mikkelsen. And they're being interviewed by a reporter. Did you see this? And they ask him, you're not going to win any awards in the Norwegian or the Swedish Film Festival because you don't have enough minorities. You haven't checked enough boxes. And the director said, it's a film in the 1700s about the first black woman in Norway. Where are we going to put the black people? And they just dismissed it. But that's how crazy it's gotten. You're not going to win any awards. You're telling a truthful story, a historic story about Norway and how we've overcome racism, which, by the way, was kind of the meaning of the story. So I just thought that was...
It's a great clip. You should look at it online because the actor and the director are so befuddled. They're so like, what are you talking about? But, really, that's where we should all react to this. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All right, next question. Who are the Hollywood gatekeepers? How do we open the gates? And when does Hollywood come to an end?
That's an interesting question. That's a question that can get you in trouble, too. See Kanye West. He started speaking out about that with terrible language, but he was trying to shed light on who's really in charge. I mean, we do it all the time with the deep state when we talk about our government. I think that there are some big-time players that are in charge that write the checks, and they're controlling the narrative. But I think that their days are numbered because of the technology.
They still have a lot of power, and the fight we're having against them in trying to get more stories into the public space, it's a David and Goliath story. I mean, at the very least. So it is hard, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think also one of the things we haven't touched on is the money aspect, where there are a lot of people who may be right of center or maybe just even interested in the culture. They don't write the checks. I talked to so many people, including Kevin Sorbo. I think we saw him on a clip earlier today. And, he basically got canceled in Hollywood because he's conservative and he's Christian. He didn't accidentally shoot someone on a set, He didn't say anything vicious on social media. He didn't sexually harass anyone. He's worked with people from all genders and backgrounds and ethnicities without any problems. But because he has different views, he's been canceled. So now he just does Sorbo Pictures or Sorbo Studios. So he makes his own movies on a shoestring. But he said it's always like pulling teeth to get anyone to give me money. So here's a guy who has been canceled, who is stuck to his principles, who's trying to beat the system, and he has to go hat in hand everywhere he goes just to make a movie.
So
and that's part of the problem.
Kevin's a partner of mine in the movie business, and Kevin's always begging for money, and I tell him, we've got, and it's funny because we have these heart-to-heart conversations with Sam, his wife, and I'm telling him we've got to build this ecosystem where you're not always looking for money. And the funny thing about people from Hollywood that used to get their films made, they all have the mentality of who's going to fund my next film? Who's going to fund my next film? You can fund your next film. That's the whole thing about the question here of what's going to happen to Hollywood. What's going to happen to Hollywood is there going to be a little Tasmanian devil like Kevin Jackson that's going to teach Hollywood a lesson. It says you can't continue to be a gangster and say, I'm going to only let you see this amount of entertainment, and I'm going to define the entertainment you see. And that's why I said they're dead man walking. Look, I was a management consultant for many years, and I could go into a company and I could say, you're out of business. Your mentality is old. You're not adjusting to the way things are going. And Hollywood is right there. And many of you will remember this conversation where I said it. I think the way we open the gates is we do it ourselves. And here's the last question. Will Hollywood start to understand, well, let's answer this one quickly, then we'll get to the next one. Will Hollywood start to understand how they are viewed and adjust? Do you think that it will change?
How they're viewed?
How they're viewed.
I think it's going to take a while. I don't think they're there yet. They don't seem to connect with the people. They don't seem to have a finger on the pulse of the people. And I'll give you two examples that are the opposite. Clint Eastwood and Tom Cruise. I don't know what Tom Cruise's personal life is like. I have no idea. It could be bad. It could be good. Who knows? But he is grateful to the American public for seeing his movies, and he knows exactly what we want to see. He's not perfect, but he knows what we want to see at the theater. And Clint Eastwood has done that. He's in his 90s now. He's still making movies that we care about. But I don't think Hollywood in general wants to listen or can listen or even is interested in learning what we want. But we have to force the issue. We have to say, okay, we're not seeing this, this, and this, but we're going to make Richmond, North of Richmond, the biggest song in the country. And we're going to make Sound of Freedom the biggest indie film in the country. And we're going to make all these other projects huge, under the radar. And then maybe at some point Hollywood says, oh my gosh, where do we throw our money behind those people? And then that expands the story, expands the perspectives. You know, one of the things that makes me giggle is this whole diversity argument in Hollywood. And yes, Hollywood has done a terrible job with diversity. Too many white faces over the years, year after year, decade after decade. But their idea of diversity now is all these different shades, but everyone thinks alike. You talk about the writer's room at the late night shows, they're diverse, I guarantee it. But they all think the same way, so what's the point? Yeah. So there has to be a sea change.
I'm more cynical. I think it just comes down to money. I think as the culture shifts and as we talk about that wrecking ball that some of us think is going to come back to the right, it all comes down to money. And they're going to start making movies we want to see as long as the cash keeps coming in. So again, you got to vote with your feet, even at the box office.
So last question has to do with awards. It says, as far as awards go, do you know if or do you think that those who are receiving awards or jobs because of their skin color are embarrassed or upset? Seems insulting.
Does anybody even watch those? Like, show of hands, what's the last Emmys or Oscars or whatever you've watched from start to finish? Do people watch it? The Slap, right? That was the only one that got it, was the Will Smith, Chris Rock. I mean, I think that stuff is, I'm done with all that stuff.
I don't think I watched the show. I think I just saw the Slap.
The Slap.
After the Slap.
What is that? It's a bunch of wealthy, extremely rich people patting each other on the back.
That's what I say.
It makes me want to puke. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm okay with that because it is their job and they're well paid. I would prefer them to be gracious and not to use it as a political soapbox.
Yeah.
And to be entertaining. When I grew up, it was Billy Crystal. He was funny. He was charming. The actors were grateful. And they really did seem like they were appreciative of the moment. Now it's like, I got to make my speech. I got to speak about climate change or this and that. And the shows are dreadfully dull because it is not about entertaining people. It is about sending a message.
Well, I think, Christian, to your point, it's who can make the most woke message while accepting the award so that I can set myself up for the next award.
That's exactly right. There are maybe like 8 to 10 different award shows over the year. So if you want the Oscar, and each time you win, you give the super woke speech, because then you build up your currency in the industry.
Who was the best speech ever? Was it Ricky Gervais?
Oh, that hosting. Yeah.
So if anyone out here in the audience or watching hasn't seen the Ricky Gervais, and I see some smiles here, just YouTube that, and that lays out a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's Golden Globes. I think it might have been 2020.
55-minute speech where from start to finish, he rips Hollywood a new one.
It's great.
Anyway, we got to end it there. Billy Harfosh,
Thank you.
radio show host and extraordinary personality. Christian Toto, the Woke Whisperer. Thanks, folks.